John, let me remind me. So what was Cash doing and who was president when Cash's records were subpoenaed?
So Cash was the chief investigative counsel for the House Intelligence Committee under Devin Nunes. And Devin Nunes, Kash Patel, and a team of other great investigators were the team that was able to help America understand, even though they were ridiculed by the traditional media at the time, that Russia collusion was a giant delusion. There was no there, just like
that was
Pete
under the
wrote in
first Trump administration.
Trump
that
won.
He was conducting
2018 is when 2018 is when their first report came out. And you mentioned Tulsi Gabbard's declassifications in your opening. One of those declassifications was a 2020 report that went back and said the CIA made up the entire intelligence assessment.
That's that House Intel report that got buried in a safe at Langley up until
That's
now.
Right.
But wait, so whose DOJ was investigating Cash's emails? Was it Trump's DOJ or Biden's DOJ?
Yeah. 2017 is when the subpoena comes in. So it is the Trump Justice Department looking at a Republican and then not looking so aggressively at Adam Schiff when they have a whistleblower that come in that fingers them.
But wait, so this is where it gets confusing for me too. I want to keep it simple for the audience. But
sure.
Because I know what happened under Donald Trump. He won. He was accused of the Russia collusion, Robert Mueller, all that. But Trump, at some point during 1.0 and via his Attorney General, Bill Barr, opened up a leak investigation to figure out who did leak that information to the media.
That's right.
And as far as I can tell, Bill Barr started to investigate it during Trump, like at least as of 2019, he was doing that. I'm not sure if it went back further. And then it doesn't seem like he made that much progress, but then it seems he bounced past that to John Durham, a special counsel who Trump appointed to take a deeper, wider look into the whole Russiagate nonsense. And Durham seemed to be focused primarily on figuring out who came up with the Russiagate nonsense. You know, Trump with the alleged server and Trump Tower linked to Alpha Bank and all the nonsense. Like that was the main, and by the way, it was Hillary and her campaign. But the secondary thing was who was leaking this nonsense to the media. And as far as I can tell, John, neither the Bill Barr initial investigation nor the John Durham bounce pass that he received ever really went anywhere.
I think that's exactly right. As far as we can tell, it didn't go anywhere. And it's possible, based on what I've learned in the last couple of days in reporting on this and looking for these documents and getting them, that career people, the deep staters, the permanent administrative state, may have made these decisions without alerting their bosses up the chain, and then they buried it. So I think that's one of the things that we have to find out. Did the U.S. attorney appointed by President Trump in Washington, D.C., did Jeff Sessions or Rod Rosenstein, remember Jeff Sessions is conflicted out of the Russiagate question, so this could have gone to Rod Rosenstein. Were they ever aware of the Adam Schiff whistleblower? If not, and was Bill Barr and was John Durham? I don't see any reference to this in the Durham report. Durham was pretty thorough and methodical in his report. Maybe not a great writer, not a great storyteller, but he got a lot of evidence in that report. I don't think it's very possible that a bureaucratic hand grabbed this at the assistant U.S. attorney's level or somewhere in the Justice Department bureaucracy and made a decision to say, we're done with this. We're not going to look at it. And it never rises to the top of the department, which is a dynamic we saw consistently during the Trump first administration, where the deep state didn't do what the president of the United States needed them to do.
Okay, but then, now here's another wrinkle. So then Biden wins, and Merrick Garland takes over as Attorney General. And they decide that the leak investigations that were started under Trump 1.0 were probably allegedly inappropriate. They cast too wide a net in going after too many congressional staffers and, you know, I guess potentially intel heads and so on, and journalists. And so they come up with like a new protocol on like, we're really going to dial it back on going after journalists. I mean, I'm sure, right? Because the Biden administration knows probably full well what the Obama administration was doing and all their favorites like Adam Schiff. This is my supposition here. And so they pulled the horse back by the bit and said, we're not that interested in leak investigations. And you know what? We actually think we're going to have an inspector general of the DOJ start investigating the investigators that Trump unleashed, who were looking into who did the leak. And the DOJ's inspector general comes back saying they went too far, like it was too aggressive. But he seems to say in a report that he finally issued, Trump had already won again. It was issued on December 10th, 2024.
Right.
And he pressed print before Trump was actually sworn in. But he seems to say that there was some whistleblower. He makes a mention of a whistleblower who they spoke to about the leaks and suggests that they did not deem this guy to be credible. Do we know whether that's the guy you're looking at? And do we have reason to doubt this whistleblower's credibility?
Well, we don't know much about him yet, right? It's hard. We don't know the name yet because the name was redacted when it was sent to Congress. So we don't know much more than that. If you interview him 4 times over 4 years, you clearly have some belief that he has credibility, or you wouldn't keep going to him and asking the question, right? You say, we don't deem him credible. They interviewed him again in 2023. I think that is a very important moment in the investigation. The other important moment in the investigation is the moments when he says leaks occurred are moments where you can see those leaks in the public. There are classified leaks that occurred in the February, March, April 2017 timeframe, right around the time that briefings occurred to the House Intelligence Committee. So when you look at that pattern, there's some prima facie proof that suggests, hey, this guy seems to be talking about something that looks on the face of it to be relevant. And I think at the end of the day, not enough meaningful investigation has been done to really resolve who's telling the truth. Either Adam Schiff is telling the truth, or this whistleblower is. That's the travesty of what happened the last 6 and 7 years. We didn't do thorough investigations to resolve things that are pretty easy to resolve. We had no problem figuring out the National Guardsman leaking documents. We could easily have figured out who leaked information. And in some cases, as you'll see tonight, Megyn, in my next story, there are senior government officials who step up to the plate and say, yes, I leaked that information and I did it at the instruction of my boss. You're going to see that tonight in a different case. And again, there's still no consequence. So the real pattern, the most obvious pattern is we seem to be outraged by leaks, but we seldom seem to be able to hold elites who are behind the leaks accountable.
And just to amend what I said, the report was that the Inspector General revealed that there were 2 lawmakers targeted by the DOJ when trying to figure out who the leakers were. Because they say because a Democratic staffer, quote, identified them to investigators as potential leakers, but without providing any evidentiary support for the claim. So it's not necessarily not credible. It's without providing any evidentiary support for the claim. Although that's odd too, because
it's an odd language,
verbal testimony is evidentiary support. And it sounds like he gave that 3 times to the or at least once in writing to the FBI. No, 3 times to the FBI because we have the 302 reports.
That's right. And he's an eyewitness. He's not a hearsay, right? Isn't like I heard this when I was in the coffee clutch at the House office building. He attends the meeting where the instructions are given.
He heard the order be given.
That's right. And that is called eyewitness testimony. It's often considered credible testimony if you're an eyewitness. And as I said, one of the things that we do know that the FBI did early on was they went to see, did leaks like this occur, right? Was this guy clairvoyant and knew leaks were going to occur and making it up? Or did the leaks actually occur? And they do see those leaks occurring. And I think when you... Yeah, I think that's what's so troubling here, which is there's a moment where Adam Schiff, you mentioned the famous moment where after Russia collusion has been completely destroyed. He goes, I'm willing to see Russia collusion. You just got to be willing to see it, right? It's there. You got to be willing to see it. In this case, the Justice Department there's leaks here, but we're not willing to see the leaks. I think that's the mentality, and that's what gives so many people the belief that we have a dual system of justice. You can take the same type of evidence and look at it 2 different ways, depending on which way the political winds are blowing, and that's not blind justice. And I think that's what troubles so many people in our system today.
Your reporting gives a little bit more color, thanks to this whistleblower, on why Adam Schiff was so ticked off and why he was really thrilled, reportedly, or according to the whistleblower, allegedly, to leak this stuff about Trump to the media. And that was, you report, based on the August 2017 whistleblower interview with the FBI, that Schiff believed he was going to be CIA director if Hillary had won, and he really wanted that job. So he it was sour grapes, basically. He was ticked off that she didn't win, and he didn't get this cush, cool job.
Yeah. So what you see when you take the 4 interviews together is that Schiff didn't get the CIA job. By the way, you can go back in history and look at open source media reports in 2016, and Schiff was mentioned as being on the short list for a senior intelligence post. So this guy's story has got corroborability just in the open record source of the time. And then Schiff wants vengeance, right? He wants either a criminal indictment of President Trump or a select committee, something like the Watergate Committee or the 9/11 Committee that he can be a part of. And so the motive is even ascribed to the account based on the conversations he had. Those are troubling things. And, I've said often, when I was a young journalist and I was finishing up my degree at Marquette University, I was lucky enough to study Senator Joe McCarthy. And I've often said what I learned by going through those documents and writing my thesis in my senior year is that the parallels between Joe McCarthy and his Red Scare in the 1950s and what Adam Schiff did 40 years later or 50 years later, very similar. You create the illusion of things without knowing whether they're true or not. You use leaks, you use rhetoric, and you fool the American people into believing something that may not be there. Now, in the case of Joe McCarthy, there was some actual communist infiltration of government. So he may have had a little bit more in his trickery to corroborate what he was saying. But when you get to Adam Schiff, he is selling a sizzle of nothing. There is no steak on the grill behind his sizzle. We know that now. And yet he has paid no consequence for taking this country through 3 and 4 years of torment.
None. He's been elevated to senator. That's what his party does when you behave like he did.
You fail up.
Okay.
You fail up.
And now I want to correct myself again, because the report, the IG report, does question this whistleblower's. I don't know if it's your whistleblower, but it does say something about credibility.
We don't know.
It says,
it sounds like it could be.
For the 2 members of Congress, the one additional piece of information was that a congressional committee employee, later determined by the Department of Justice to have little support for their contentions and to be of uncertain credibility, had identified them to investigators as potential leakers, but without providing any evidentiary support for the claim. Yeah. Now, we don't know what that means. We don't know whether it's the same guy, and we don't know what they mean to be of uncertain credibility. All of that needs to be investigated and fleshed out. And, it's very simple. Go to the other people on the committee and ask whether they were there. I mean, ask him who was present when the order was given, and then go to the other members of the committee and ask that. It doesn't seem like that was done, because that would have been in the Inspector General's report. That's a very simple thing. The question is, why wouldn't they have done it? So what do we think the effect of the sparring between President Donald Trump and the Fed is going to be? Can the Fed take the right action at the right time? Do we trust in that? Or are we going to be looking at a potential economic slowdown as they slow roll any of their moves as they worry about his tariffs? And what exactly does all of this mean for your savings? You might want to consider diversifying right about now with gold through Birch Gold Group. For decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of economic stagnation, global uncertainty, and high inflation. And Birch Gold makes it incredibly easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you have an IRA or old 401k, you can convert that into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or just buy some gold to keep it in your safe. First, get educated. Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. Just text MK to the number 989898. Again, text MK to 989898, and you'll start the process of just getting the 411 on what it means to own gold. Consider diversifying a portion of your savings into gold. So if the Fed cannot stay ahead of the curve for the country, at least you can stay ahead of the curve for yourself. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.